I have a confession to make. I like mascot horror games. This genre of video game has devolved a lot in the past few years. Everyone knows that already. But at its core, mascot horror as a concept is something I really enjoy because of the potential the medium could have. The problem is that for a game genre that could have so much potential for cool settings and gameplay ideas, it's kinda just started to halt dead in its tracks, as more hastily put together games are shoved out to a mass audience of kids with the hopes of getting that sweet MatPat lore video or merch deal. Though when mascot horror is criticized, it's usually done in a manner that focuses a lot on the designs of the characters the game revolves around. And although these things could definitely warrant some criticism in their own right, a neglected part of the discussion when it comes to the topic of mascot horror is just how homogenous and similar the gameplay throughout a grand majority of these experiences feel. Although FNAF is clamored as the grandfather of this silly little genre, the game that I'd argue really created the template for mascot horror was Bendy and the Ink Machine. Free roam gameplay divided into chapters that have a heavy focus on linear exploration and puzzle solving with no means of defense against your enemy other than your own 2 feet. Now, hiding and evading while solving puzzles isn't necessarily a bad structure of gameplay, but as it continues to be cloned, it's really just gotten worse after every new iteration of this tired old formula. And unfortunately, there really haven't been many games that break this mold. Or so I thought. A game that has completely flew under my radar during the boom of mascot horror discussion was one that seemed to take all the problems I had with the genre and completely throw them out the window. My Friendly Neighborhood, a mascot horror game that released very recently that does not play at all like how you'd expect a modern mascot horror game to play. No chapters, no merch button on the title screen, and most importantly, you can shoot stuff. This game basically came out of nowhere for me. It was brought up in occasional conversations around me, but I never bothered to check it out for some reason. But something compelled me to check out the demo 2 nights before the full game came out, and to say I fell in love may be an understatement. My Friendly Neighborhood structure can honestly be viewed as a reversal of mascot horror. Instead of using the childlike setting as a base and twisting it into a dark and corrupted version of itself to subvert your expectations, My Friendly Neighborhood rather follows a gameplay structure typically associated with gruesome, horrifying games by themselves, and puts them into a very intentionally tame and sometimes even comical setting. So, when compared to the competition, it really sets MFN apart from a lot of what we'd expect. But that explanation is very brief. I'm not letting on nearly as much as I could be right now, but the only way to find out more is to enter.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
My Friendly Neighborhood is the brainchild of developers John Szymanski and Evan Szymanski. If those names sound familiar, that's because they are.
You finally arrived.
These two are the brothers of David Szymanski, a borderline indie games legend, not limited to, but known for making and helping make Dusk, Gloomwood, and like that one little game where you're like stuck in a rust box. I don't know, you've probably never heard of it. Gloomwood is another game I covered on this channel a while back, and although it's not mascot horror, the gameplay ideas borrowed from there seem to have seeped their way into this project just a little bit, and judging how I feel about Gloomwood, I am certainly not complaining. We'll get into that in just a little bit, though. The game starts off with this somewhat cryptic and kind of ominous cutscene of a TV channel phasing in and out of a program and an old broadcasting of the puppet show My Friendly Neighborhood. The end of the cutscene states a woman being interviewed that television helps dull the pain of her everyday life.
It dulls the pain.
A theme we'll be seeing a lot as we go through this game.
Okay, last job of the day. What's this one about?
With that, we are introduced to our protagonist named Gordon.
Gordon, you're over half an hour late. Where the fuck have you been?
We're an electrician who was called in to fix the antenna of an old broadcasting studio that has been shut down for a while, as the building has since been broadcasting the reruns of the old children's puppet show. When you arrive, we're met up with the first puppet we encounter.
Raise the curtain. Bring up the lights. The neighborhood is coming to town.
Ricky is one of the only non-hostile puppets in the entire game. He just kinda shows up to be funny for a little bit and then he just leaves. Truly the man I inspire to be. He then throws up a key card, then we turn around to go use it in one of the other buildings. If me talking about how this game does things a bit differently hasn't given it away yet, I think I'll just get right into it. My Friendly Neighborhood, at its core, is a survival horror game. A buzzword you probably hear thrown around most horror games, but I can assure you, Mr. Uncanny's Tickle Funhouse of Play Hour is not a survival horror game. These games are usually defined by their linear, but very open levels that you backtrack to multiple times throughout different stages of the game. This could be because you found puzzles that you couldn't do previously without a certain item, or to unlock new areas you previously couldn't with a new key or something similar you found to help you progress. You'd probably hear this and think that there are a few Mascot horror games that already do this. If you're an insane person, you could probably even argue that something like Ban has done this kind of structure. And honestly, you'd be kind of right. But this aspect only makes up one half of survival horror. The other half is made up of resource management, whether that be through your consumable items or your ammunition. Managing something tangible that would make survival a lot more difficult without is the quintessential ingredient to a survival horror game. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been a Mascot horror game that has come along and done both of these concepts simultaneously. Usually it's either one or the other. My Friendly Neighborhood being, to my knowledge, the first Mascot horror game to truly commit to this style of gameplay. Doors with keys that you can't get to until way later in the game, weapons with scarce ammo littered around the map, and most importantly, a grid-style inventory. This seems to be something that is a common theme throughout games developed by the Szymanski family, and I could not be happier. This is what we call in the business a certified Szymanski W. The inventory in this game obviously takes heavy inspiration from the attaché case in Resident Evil 4. Now, a lot of horror games with an inventory take heavy inspiration off of this style, some doing it better than others. How does My Friendly Neighborhood stack? It's alright. I don't know if it's just because I played on harder difficulties the whole time and I just had less resources altogether, but I never really found myself truly running out of space enough to warrant having to manage anything in here. On all of my playthroughs, I didn't even have to use any of the portable storage systems inside the safe rooms once, because you don't really need to store anything in there. This was just in my experience though. In some of the gameplay I've seen of others playing the game, they actually did make use of these, so they obviously aren't entirely useless. You can't get any expansions to the case or bigger cases either, but as mentioned previously, the given size is more than enough, so you don't really need any extra space. All the things you are going to be fitting in here are just going to be your guns, healing items, puzzle pieces, coins that you can use at healing or saving stations, and tape, which is a really important item. Something very genius that this game does is make ammo feel a lot less helpful, but in the best way possible. Every enemy in this game works practically like a Crimson Head from Resident Evil. If you kill a puppet and leave a room, as soon as you go back into that room, they will be respawned. If there's a puppet that's giving you particular trouble in a given section of the game, the only way to neutralize them permanently is to tape them up while they're down. Though, even this will not get them to shut up. Tape is a pretty rare item, even rarer on harder difficulties, so avoiding enemies most of the time is going to be your only option. It's not that bad though, their AI is pretty standard and you could sneak through a lot of encounters. And if all else fails, you can obviously just... Yeah, we should talk about that too, actually. Although My Friendly Neighborhood has weapons, guns at that, they are handled in a very creative way. We're not given a standard pistol or a shotgun to blow off the faces and limbs of every puppet we come across, but we are rather given these weapons that thematically fit within the theming of the game that fire out letters instead of bullets. Now, granted, these weapons are very strange, and there's never really a concrete explanation as to why we're given them, other than they were built for security, special effects, and fun. Exploring a bit of the production side of the studio, you eventually get a key that allows you to enter the main set of the level. I absolutely adore this. My Friendly Neighborhood's parallels to its source materials are translated and adapted with so much love and care that they are borrowing from. And this set here particularly shows how much admiration the devs had for the early works of Jim Henson. Old Sesame Street had this very grungy and urban look to the sets compared to what the sets actually look like today. And I think this environment particularly does a really good job of translating the character and charm of that old look while also letting the game make it their own. This, on top of the little nods made to his works through posters and text, really makes me believe this concept was put in the right hands. There is also just so much you can look around at in here too. The environment is set up so perfectly that you can envision exactly where the camera would be placed on these sets, included with all the backstage charm viewable throughout the level as well. You do fun little puzzles that have you searching throughout the set with the end goal of finding these letter blocks. But while you're searching, Mascot Horror's biggest bird is on the prowl, and since she can't see, she's most likely going to trample you. But speaking of which, now I think it's a good time to talk about another thing this game does very differently than a lot of other Mascot Horror games. All of the puppets around here are very obviously alive, and, well, they're trying to get you. But the explanation given as to why is more derivative than you'd probably expect it to be. The puppets weren't birthed from some super element or fused with the souls of old production workers. The puppets are just alive, and that's the extent of it. It's really refreshing to see this take on Mascot Horror, as I feel haunted objects have become way too common of a trope in this genre. Although humans and puppets coexisting does raise some questions about their sentience and their citizenship and why there's so many of the same puppet, but hey, let's not question it, at least for now, as we can now leave stage 4. We're given a hand crank that we can go use outside in the now night sky, or we can just leave right now, and we get a very early ending of the game where we just get fired.
The next day I got called into the office because the network wasn't happy. Wanted to know why I hadn't finished the job. After a big long fight, I got fired. I'm fine with that. I'd rather be unemployed than have to go back there. But for the next few months, I actually started watching the nightly news. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to see what happened. But nothing happened. Then at some point I got distracted and forgot about it.
But if you don't want to play this like a Ubisoft game, we can actually go and do what we were tasked to do and go into the sewers.
Well, no getting back up that way.
After a quick talk with Ricky, we are then free to explore the level. Now, if you are a survival horror veteran, you'd usually know that the sewer levels of these types of games are mostly not the greatest, mainly because of the shift in style of where you're exploring becoming very identical, with every room you're traversing in feeling the same. But in all honesty, I think the sewers of My Friendly Neighborhood might possibly be one of my favorite levels of the entire game. And I feel like the devs thought so as well, as this is the area that took spotlight in the demo. The thing that makes this environment stick out from a lot of sewer locations you'd usually be used to in video games is that just because it's a sewer doesn't mean they are abandoning the set dressing of the area. These rooms double as a functional sewer to the facility, as well as a place where there are extra filming locations. And the game makes that known as soon as you enter the very first room of the level. But there has to be a reason as to why sets were put down here, and the explanation as to why is because it is housing our second special puppet of the game, Ray, a plumber puppet who just hits everything with a wrench like he is the TF2 engineer. Ray is a very interesting character, described as being temperamental by Ricky and roaming the pipes of the sewer system. He's honestly not that big of a threat, and he's very easy to avoid and does the same amount of damage as any other puppet if you're caught by him. Our main goal of this area is to locate and use the elevator somewhere around the level to escape back to the surface. On our quest to do so, we are given the third weapon of the game.
Let's get writing.
The novelist is our shotgun stand-in. Instead of firing pieces of paper from a roller dexter that print into words, the novelist rather takes shells of book pages that fire a huge radius of words and typically knock out a puppet with just one bullet. It's super useful for crowd control if you're being ambushed by a few at a time, but I'd definitely recommend saving your shells if you can, because you're not going to find many of them, even on the very easy difficulties. Our next goal is to look for the plugs that are in the shape of chess pieces that you use to open one of the doors to get out of here. Now, if you've played Resident Evil 2, me saying that probably brought up some not so great memories, but the puzzle here is honestly not that bad. You just gotta explore around the sewer system for a little bit until you find one of each of these breaker boxes that houses one of the plugs. While searching for them, you can actually utilize these neat little boat rooms that allow you to swiftly travel throughout the map, somewhat similar to the carts of the castle levels in Resident Evil 4. Getting all the fuses unlocks the left door of this room, with the bolt cutters that you can use to unlock the area of the map with the elevator. This is straightforward enough, but if you're playing on unfriendly difficulty, this'll happen. Anyways, getting on the elevator takes us to the surface. Well, not actually. We're thrown into this office environment, which is probably my most favorite, but also my least favorite segment of the entire game. The starting environment of this place is absolutely gorgeous. Most definitely the best looking area of the game fidelity-wise, with subtle ties to the Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil 1 mixed into there too. And, of course, with a new level transition comes a new special puppet. This puppet being Goblet, a green blob with salt shakers for fingers who will charge and pile drive you if you stand in her line of sight. She also makes some of the grossest noises I have ever heard. We're not given nearly as formal of an introduction to her as we were with Ray, so she was a lot more of a surprise seeing her for the first time. She's really easy to avoid though, just as long as you keep your distance, so I don't think you'd have to worry too much. Though this area also introduces another different type of enemy, being what I like to call the minis. These creatures give me so much unnecessary trouble when I was playing the game. They're incredibly small and hard to hit, but the catch being that they can go down with just one swing of your wrench. Despite this, I can never time exactly when they're going to hit me, so they always get me first. Like, god damn, I hate you! This area is also home to our third weapon of the game as well, the punctuation. A grenade type weapon that's even better at taking out huge crowds of puppets, but even rarer than the shotgun shells. I'd save these guys up because I found them particularly useful at the ending of this section. Our goal of this level is simple: find a way to walk out one of the exit doors in the front. Our first call to action is to do a puzzle to get the red key from this Norman puppet in the break room by battling him in a board game. Conceptually, this is my absolute favorite puzzle in the game, and possibly one of my favorite puzzles in a survival horror game ever. It's so simple, but the concept is just so fun and fresh for a formula like this, especially when the loop of most survival horror puzzles is just a constant dopamine rush of unlocking things. I will say though, it is really possible to get super awful RNG with the cards that you're given. Doesn't help that Norman slaps you every time you lose too. The puzzle actually being branded with the My Friendly Neighborhood characters is a really nice touch too, and goes to show how big the brand must have been at the time to warrant getting physical merchandise. Making your way through the rooms of this building, you'll find masks that you can hang up in this room that in turn give you dice to plug into a safe in the break room. If this sounds complicated, welcome to survival horror. This is honestly why this area kind of falls apart for me. On a first playthrough, this felt very dragged out, and a lot of the rooms that diverge from the main hall feel very samey. It's not too bad though. Setting the dice in the safe allows us to grab the part that we need to plug into the power generator to access the CEO office. Up here, we finally find the key that will allow us to leave the offices. But as we're coming down, we hear a very peculiar noise. I hope you saved up those punctuations. This is the first boss of the game, a giant curtain-like puppet with all-seeing eyes littered all around its body. To attack you, it spits out dead Normans and especially several of those miniature puppets. I'm still not really sure what this guy is supposed to represent, but it's very easy to kill, and we continue on to the next area of the game. With the red key we acquired in the office, we're finally able to open this breaker box outside. Flipping the switch gives us access to the studio's park. Having an environment that mainly focuses on the outside is certainly a nice breath of fresh air from the very enclosed areas we've grown accustomed to by this point. Going a bit further, we meet up with Ricky again, and we are given a very interesting exchange of dialogue this time.
Gordon, where are you going?
Where do you think?
What's the matter with you? Don't you want to be our friend?
You have a funny way of making friends. I'm lucky I haven't been hugged to death or eaten.
Okay, I admit we're not at the top of our game, but you can't throw us out just because we've made a few mistakes.
I'm just doing my job.
Sure. I take it blasting your way through hordes of allegedly psychopathic puppets is a normal day at work for you, Seriously, Gordon, who hurt you?
I don't know what you're talking about.
No? So you were just born a bully?
I'm not a bully.
Surprised you're not a detective. They're always bashing down doors and brandishing guns. Or maybe a GI. Give you a chance to rampage through some small defenseless...
Don't say that, Ricky.
Say what?
Don't talk about the war.
Why not? Just saying. Seems like exactly the sort of place you got.
The mention of a war is very notable here. If you've been slightly paying attention throughout the game, you might have stumbled across a few notes and articles chronicling a war fought on the northern continent. This plays a lot into the meaning of My Friendly Neighborhood, but that's something we unfortunately gotta save for later, because dog! Our next special puppets of the area. These 3 hounds roam around the outdoor areas of the studio and are possibly some of the toughest enemies to knock down in the game, mainly because you cannot tape them up and 3 shots with the roller dexter only briefly stuns these guys, so certainly be very vigilant when dealing with them. The park is also the area with our final notable task. Apparently, this glue problem was something super common in the studio, so there was a given solution on how to create a substance to remove it. Getting it requires backtracking all around the studio to get the substances, having to travel back to the offices and sewers to get 2 liquids that we would need. The last one is hidden inside this playground that we need to grab the key from in Studio 4. Opening it has us do this puzzle where we need to put the correct pegs in order as they are aligned in the garden. Then, our hatch with our final liquid opens up. Saying goodbye to the park, we make our way back to the main lobby, and finally de-glue the door leading to the very top of the studio. But, of course, things weren't going to be that easy. We don't simply enter the roof, we arrive somewhere a lot more strange. All the walls are made of this cardboard and have their details drawn on them, all while a grating piano plays throughout. The source of this piano playing comes from the final special puppet we encounter. We learned that this puppet's name is Arnold, who is very clearly inspired by a weird combination of Elmo from Sesame Street and Animal from the Muppets. We gotta somehow get past him to finally get to the roof. We need to bring power to the stage he's on by finding these puzzle pieces scattered across the rooms by doing a variety of puzzles. Most notably this one where we had to cook a fake key to replace with the real key so we can start opening up boxes that house the puzzle pieces. We do this by needing to make a banana, hot sauce, and soup. I won't say every recipe needed to do this puzzle, but just to show you what we're working with, to make the banana, we need milk, which we put in the microwave to make cheese, which we then cut to get the banana. Oh, the other 2 recipes are just as absurd as well, don't worry. Putting all 3 together in the fridge for 5 seconds gets us our fake key. Hooray? We can use this key to unlock the chests that have more puzzle pieces in the map like I said earlier, but it's also used to unlock this secret door that takes us to a pool area. This room has a very strange ambient track of children playing in it, which I always found quite odd. Anyways, this room eventually leads us to getting the last puzzle piece, and then we finally get Arnold's attention.
If you didn't start banging on the piano like that, my ears were gonna start bleeding.
Play to that.
No.
Play to what?
I can't read music. Get off me, you... Oh, jeez. Okay. Great. Sounds good, buddy. I'm gonna go now, okay?
Bye now, I guess. Leaving Arnold's lair, we can finally make it to the broadcasting station and hit the stop broadcasting button. Oh, of course the button doesn't work. To the roof it is, I guess. While Gordon scales the radio antenna to manually shut off the program, we get a nice good look at the city as we do. This moment is really somber, honestly. Our job is almost complete, and the music complements this. As soon as we get to the breaker box, though, I think you can guess who shows up.
Gordon, you don't have to do this.
I don't want you broadcasting, Ricky. You're gonna hurt kids.
Hurt them? Gordon, we want to help them. They need us. You need us.
For what?
For what? Gordon, look at this city. The buildings are dark and the streets are empty. No one knows how to be a friendly neighbor. It's a city of shuttered up hearts, and they need someone to let in the light.
I don't think that's you, Ricky.
You know why I think we got canceled?
Why?
Because people like darkness more than light.
Why would they do that?
Maybe it makes them uncomfy because it shows how messed up they are.
What are you talking about, Ricky?
I'm talking about our show, Gordon. We show them how to be friendly, and they hate that because they're not friendly.
I don't think that's the problem, Ricky.
Really? Are you sure about that, Gordon? Do you really think the city network suits care about anything except their bank account? Do you really think people won't take any excuse to ignore their own issues? Come on, Gordon. We both know, deep down, you want to be friendly.
Sorry, Ricky.
Gordon? Shoot!
Plummeting down to the garbage disposal like we're Kyle Crane, we get up and arrive somewhere pretty strange. Ricky calls us and explains we're at a set that isn't active anymore.
Goodness.
So, what are they? Bad puppets?
Oh, Gordon, I really hoped you wouldn't find out. It's so embarrassing. But we were all curious.
What do you mean?
We wanted to know what other shows had that we didn't. We'd never been allowed to watch television before, but after we got canceled, no one was around to stop us.
Okay.
So we turned on one of the old sets, expecting to see something amazing. But it wasn't amazing. It was mean. It felt like we were dying, Gordon. We all got a little twisted then, but some of us.
Now, throughout the game, the puppets have been aggressive, but none of them came off as too malicious. Down here, though, things are different. Dozens of corrupted and twisted puppets start to rush Gordon, but that isn't even the main concern of this area. An amalgam of all the negativity and malice the puppets were fed is here for you to confront. You can actually win this encounter by not hurting the puppet at all, but if you decide to do otherwise, I really hope you have enough ammo saved up. The boss fight isn't anything too crazy. You just need to circle this puppet a couple of times while taking some breaks to shoot at it. If it goes down, you are able to start the elevator back up and get out of the unfriendly neighborhood. We arrive in the office of Al Griswold, the founder of My Friendly Neighborhood. In his office is his final note he wrote regarding the cancellation of the program. But we can wait until getting to that right now. Walking out, it's morning, and Gordon meets up with Ricky one last time.
Oh?
You've been hanging around the studio. You know a little bit about our show.
Spit it out, Ricky.
I was wondering if you'd help run our studio.
What?
Won't you be our neighbor?
I just don't think that's a good idea.
Refusing Ricky's offer gets us the worst ending. We just go on with our everyday monotony of our life, never truly feeling fulfilled.
For the next few months, I actually started watching the nightly news. Don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to see if something happened. But nothing happened. And at some point, I got distracted and forgot about it.
Though, if we were to accept his offer, things are a little bit different.
We'll give it a shot.
Oh, Gordon, I'm so glad. We will have such fun.
I'm not living here, though.
Well, we'll talk about that. Oh, Gordon, thank you. Thank you for being our friend. I am bursting at the seams. I must go tell the others at once. Tomorrow night, then?
No.
It's decided. Tomorrow night. See you later, Gordon. Arrivederci. Toodaloo. 23 skidoo. Ciao.
O'Brien, what have you done this time? I helped the neighbors get a slot on public access TV. It was late night on weekdays. I don't think anyone watched it. Within a couple of weeks, though, word was starting to get out. Some people loved the show, some people hated it. That caught the network's attention. And by the end of the year, we had 3 channels wanting to sign for a whole season. At that point, I figured I had done my part. So I stopped showing up at the studio in the evenings. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to keep my head down. I never told anyone I was helping bring back the show. But for some reason, it keeps bugging me. I can't forget about it. And some nights, I catch myself staring out the window, wondering what's happening in the neighborhood.
And that's My Friendly Neighborhood, an amazing translation of all the best parts of survival horror wrapped around the neat bow of mascot horror on top. But the mascots aren't the only thing that was borrowed from the more traditional side of mascot horror games. I think it's a given that there's more to be found. My Friendly Neighborhood has a ton of optional places to explore if you want to, these areas being very important if you want to get a better ending, or even possibly new items to help you throughout your journey. The most special out of these areas, though, is a place you really gotta work to get to. Back in the office, there's a theater that can play a collage of different tapes. All of these tapes together trigger something very important, but we can still save that for just a little bit later. The thing we really need to focus on right now is the third tape we get while searching throughout. This tape depicts something pretty interesting. Now, if you were adventurous with your first playthrough of the game, you might remember this safe that was in the parking area of Studio 4 that had no clear combination. Though, one of these tape reels gives us the combination, and going back to that safe to put it in, you're given a very peculiar item. I know where I can use this. So yeah, remember how I said we only opened up the left door in the sewers down here? Well, using this new plug that we found in the safe, we can open up the right door, which leads us to an elevator to a very special location. Welcome to Set 5. There's honestly not much to do around here. It's nowhere near as detailed and sprawling as Stage 4, but this environment certainly serves a very notable purpose. In one of the caves of this stage, there's a chest that needs 3 gems to be put into it. Locating all the gems in the level allows us to open the chest for a very special item inside.
This'll bring him to a full stop.
This thing is completely broken, dude. I mean, just look at Norman go. This thing absolutely shreds whatever is in its path, with the only downside to it being that the bullets you're given is the only ammo you will have throughout the game. So I'd definitely recommend saving it for when you really feel like you need it. You're given like 1,000 bullets though, so you should be good. Another area that is also completely optional, but really important if you want to get the secret ending, is the greenhouse. This area is pretty good for a multitude of reasons, honestly. Obviously for the aforementioned reason, but also for the supplies you can be given here. If you were paying attention in the early game, you might have noticed this medallion half that you were given at the very start. After you get the triangle key in the smaller greenhouse in the park, you can go back down to the breaker room in the sewers to open this box that houses the second half of the medallion needed to open up this area. Outside of it is dog food that we can use to feed the pups with. Trust me, this is very important. There's actually a few examples of something like this that you can do with all the special puppets in the game. If you played around with this pizza clock in stage 4, you might have opened this box that gave you these weird looking glasses. If you position yourself in the correct area, you can actually put these on Pearl, since before this she was missing her eyes. Doing so triggers this cutscene.
That's a good girl. There we go. See, nice and calm. It's been a long time since you saw yourself, huh? Happens to all of us. We all get shocked sometimes when we look in the mirror. Oh, sorry.
You can do similar actions with Ray and Goblet too. Getting access to Ray's lair with the triangle key allows you to walk in there and fix his plumbing. Doing so also gets him off your tail for the rest of the game. But since you don't get this key until you're long done with the sewers, I don't think it's really all that helpful, honestly. And finally, you can help Goblet after finding all the film reels in the theater. Doing so triggers this cutscene. There's an underlying theme to My Friendly Neighborhood I've kinda been ignoring up until this point. That being the imagery and dialogue mentioning this apparent war that was fought somewhere in the northern continent. This war waged for years, and according to notes throughout the game, led to over 100,000 casualties. A war that ultimately caused the events of this entire game to happen. While you're playing the game and exploring the now vacant studio, the question of why comes up a lot. Why are the puppets so aggressive? Why did the show just start suddenly broadcasting? And I believe most importantly, why was the studio shut down in the first place? The answer isn't found through some murders that happened in the facility, or some crazy event that caused all the workers to go insane. This answer can be found quite clearly, actually, and it correlates directly with this war that has happened in this universe. My Friendly Neighborhood started off as a public access TV program titled Ricky with Friends, a direct reference to Sam and Friends, the very first full-scale project Jim Henson ever worked on. The show was enough of a success to warrant being rebranded with supposedly some new characters and a much higher budget, and thus, My Friendly Neighborhood was born. It was immediately a hit among families, and it had a pretty prosperous reign, with a ton of merch and movie deals. But after this war started to be waged, the magic of this show was lost to a lot of the people of the city, leading to this major cloud of cynicism among the common people, which drove a lot of viewers to reject the teachings of the show. This feeling of cynicism even corrupting its way into some of the showrunners. The main human lead, Richie Bromley, ultimately leaving the show after alleging Ray attacked him while filming. All of these scandals, on top of the changing tides of a post-war nation, ultimately led to My Friendly Neighborhood being cancelled in 1983. Post-cancellation, the puppets were forced to roam the now vacant and slowly decaying halls and sets of the studio, being able to be exposed to a new landscape of television in the meantime, and becoming a lot more malicious as a result. And although some of this may have just resulted in some mild aggressive behavior, some puppets weren't as lucky. But if Gordon takes the extra steps in bringing the studio back, helping every puppet he comes across will ultimately be rewarded with the best ending the game has to offer.
I helped the neighbors get a slot on public access TV. It was late night on weekdays. I don't think anyone watched it. Within a couple of weeks, though, word was starting to get out. Some people loved the show, some people hated it. That caught the network's attention. And by the end of the year, we had 3 channels wanting to sign for a whole season. Of course, after my boss found out I was involved, I got fired. But somehow, I feel a little hopeful about it. It's hard to describe. It's like you've been lost in a tunnel, until suddenly a voice calls your name. And you turn around, and you see the rising sun. And it's so bright, maybe it hurts a little to look at. But you don't care. Because it's leading you home.
These last words Gordon says at the end of the game are very touching, and wrap up the themes of this game into one neat little bow. In his departing note, Al Gerswald explains to his last remaining loyal viewers that beyond the darkness, there is still light, and to hold on to it. Gordon, by simply just being a friendly neighbor, was able to bring some of that light back into the city, which, hopefully, starts to bring a brighter future to this once friendly town. Okay, now surely that's all to see in this game, right? Any survival horror game isn't complete without its cheats and unlocks. These can range from anything as simple as infinite ammo, or something like getting a frickin' lightsaber in Silent Hill 3. My Friendly Neighborhood does cheats in a very simple way, but in a way I still appreciate. Some cheats can be unlocked by just beating the game, but the real good ones are going to be hidden throughout the levels somewhere for you to discover. The rarity of these tapes can range from literally being right in your face, to absurdly bizarre locations that can sometimes lead you to completely unique areas. You got your usual cheats you can enable, infinite ammo, invincibility, bigger heads, all this stuff being available to you at any time as well. Included with the cheat menu, you're given 4 modes you can play around with as well. There's a lot of variety here too, such as a built-in speedrun mode, a free cam mode that lets you explore out of bounds of ease, as well as a dusk mode, which as the name suggests makes the game play like dusk. And let me tell you, this game was not built with jumping in mind. There's also a mode that just like turns Gordon into a chicken. Why was this a mode? Shouldn't this just been a cheat? Anyways, there's a lot you can find with these cheats enabled. One of my favorite parts about free cam mode is the sheer amount of things this game hides outside of your vision that you can see. Whether it be funny little Easter eggs to a barrage of concept art for you to stumble across while playing. While messing around with it, I actually found this note I never knew existed in the conference room with a collection of masks, just like the ones we see when we get the dice. But in this drawing, there's a 5th one. We can get the last mask by doing this very obtuse puzzle in the same room the safe is located in. And if we place all 5 in the correct order in the main lobby, doing so unlocks a very bizarre room. I am still stumped on what this machine can mean. I have tried numerous combinations I believe might have a slight chance of working, but alas, I still haven't figured it out. And it seems like as of right now, nobody has. But if I had to wager, whatever you need to do correctly in this room will finally unlock that mysterious room 123 just across from it. As when we try to open it right now, we're just given ellipses. I don't know if this is the start of an ARG, or if cracking this will open up some sort of super secret ending or something, but as of right now, only time can tell. My Friendly Neighborhood has a myriad of content and is one of the most all-around complete Mascot horror games I have ever played. The game is incredibly short if you know what you're doing, and you could probably beat the entire thing in less than an hour, but it makes up for it in just how replayable everything is here. This is a Mascot horror game that was made by people who absolutely adore survival horror, and appreciate every little aspect of that special genre, while also adapting and evolving several old and worn-out aspects of Mascot horror too, finding a really nice balance between the two, that I believe this niche of horror desperately needed. Though, just because a medium may be looked at with a negative light by most part, sometimes deservingly, doesn't mean that the concept itself has no merit. I mean, it got popular in the first place, so it must have been doing something right. I think this game serves as a reminder that no matter how stale or formulaic an idea can get, no matter how twisted, inflated, and lazy these concepts can be warped into, there's always going to be someone who can use those same templates and make something quite memorable. And with that, I think it's time to say goodnight to the neighborhood. Well, that was a job well done. Now I can finally relax. Ugh, fine. I am very morbidly curious this time. Let's see what you're gonna offer this time, Ban. I'll be waiting. I've been Dags, and until next time, see ya.